Welcome to today's installment of Athletes at the Intersection of Race, Culture, and Influence. We're thrilled today to have with us longtime NBA player Joakim Noah, as well as longtime NBA executive Steve Stowe. This is the Tom and Susie Wasdin Speaker Series. The Wasdins are gracious enough to sponsor this series, which highlights cutting-edge research, education, and initiatives at the University of Florida in partnership with other colleges and departments. It's spearheaded by the Department of Health and Human Performance, and today's session is being organized and brought to you logistically by the Department of Sports Management. Our first guest is Joakim Noah, well known to folks in Gainesville at the University of Florida, as well as around the country. Joakim was a part of the 04s, the class of University of Florida players that came and won back-to-back national championships in 2006 and 2007. In 2007, he was the 9th pick overall in the first round of the Chicago Bulls in the NBA draft. Went on to play over a decade in the NBA, was a two-time NBA All-Star, and in 2014 was named the NBA Defensive Player of the Year. We also have with us Steve Stowe. Steve has been an executive with the Miami Heat for 21 years. He is the vice president and CEO of the Miami HEAT Charitable Fund. And in that role, Steve provides assistance for players, coaches, and the organization in making a difference in their community and beyond. Steve is also the liaison between the Miami Heat's board of directors and the club. So we'll start today with Joakim. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Joakim, we'll kick things off with you, if you don't mind. You've got, quite the amazing background. And I'm just going to say from the beginning, there's probably like an 82% chance at some point I call you Yannick, because I've been watching Wimbledon for the last 2 days and I've got tennis on the brain. For those of you who don't know, Joakim's mom was a model and sculptor and still is involved in many of your initiatives. And then your dad is, of course, the tennis player, Yannick Noah, who I grew up watching playing Connors and McEnroe and those folks in the 70s and 80s, not to date myself, but watch that. And then, so you grew up in that background, in that setting, grew up in Paris and then in New York. And then somehow you ended up at the University of Florida. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went from Brooklyn and New Jersey playing basketball, then to ending up in Gainesville?
Well, it was definitely a difference in culture, but honestly, it was the best decision of my life. Being around all these educated people, but definitely different mindsets, different philosophies. When I was in school at UF, we were at war. We were in war in Iraq. There was an election, so it was definitely a charged time. But it definitely, blew my mind away. Just what I learned at Florida was just really just to learn and to be patient and to accept and listen to people who have different perspectives. And I think that being at UF was definitely life-changing for me.
Okay. That's interesting to hear. And when you use the words learn, accept, and exhibit patience, I must admit I was a little thrown, because one of the things that, I spoke to Billy Donovan, I've known Billy for years, Donnie Jones, and one of the things that they mentioned was you went from being a freshman who played a handful of minutes, scored a tiny bit, and injured, and then 10 months later, you are the most outstanding player of the Final Four as your team wins a national championship. I mean, that's a really rapid ascent, at least to those of us on the outside. And they kept coming back to the fact that you throw yourself into everything you do. You immerse yourself, your work ethic, and the like. So I guess when you talk about learning and being patient and the like, you're also going full speed as you do those things.
100%. I mean, I think it's about finding your passion, what you're interested in, and going for it. Being a student athlete at UF is one of the toughest things I ever had to do. People don't realize how hard it is to play a game at Kentucky at 8 p.m. on ESPN, and then having school the next day, and then having practice the next day. So that was not easy, but it was also a very, very, very special time. And being able to compete like that in front of all your classmates, and then coming back to school, and the love that the athletes get on campus, it was a really special time.
Well, it had to be really special. A lot said about the national championship ceremony after 2006 back on campus when you guys all announced you were coming back. Certainly it was, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, it was a sacrifice for everybody. But as I'm told the story, Billy Donovan tells you, look, Joakim, you're the number one pick right now if you come out. If you don't, there's going to be Greg Oden and Kevin Durant, and you're not going to be the number one pick. And, there's nowhere to go but down if you're starting as the number one pick. And you looked at that situation, you said, I'm coming back.
It's a decision I'm really proud of. I just know it was definitely a unique decision that you don't see a lot. But my roommate Corey Brewer came from really, really humble beginnings, and he was the one who's kind of decided that he wanted to come back, and he had an opportunity to make a lot of money as well. And that really, years later, it was almost 15 years later. And that really what resonates with me was when he decided, let's come back to school. It was an easy decision for me because I knew where he was coming from, and it was different than the three other roommates, and Al and Torian. And so for me, it was an easy decision. Once Corey said we're coming back, that's when I said, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, because all you're facing the risk of injury or who knows what, and so yeah, you're right for Corey to say that with his background. Probably did set the tone.
He did
in some ways. How about that? Okay, and all of you went on to amazing careers, thank goodness, in the NBA and in making that decision. Then we're looking back, as you said, 15 years later, and you guys are the last team to repeat. So
yeah, well, it was also just we had such a good time, man. And those are times, your memories once basketball is over for me in terms of my professional career, and all you have at the end are your memories and your relationships. So at the end of the day, sometimes you can get caught up in wins and losses, but it's about cherishing your relationships and the people that were true to you. And I think that this isn't just about sports. This is just about, now we're talking about life. And I think that's what's most important, because sometimes you get so caught up in, being successful in your career and people's expectations that you forget what's important. And I look back on it now, and I have some really, really close friends that I'm going to keep for the rest of my life. And that's what I cherish. And those memories that we had are something that, nobody can take those memories away from us.
Yeah. Wow. And that's something, certainly as I age, I've learned that relationships really are the fabric that make everything so much more worthwhile. Let me talk a little bit about then even in the NBA, and I want to come back to relationships, responsibility, and tie it into the larger social picture. But first, I want to ask just kind of a question on your role on whether it was Bulls teams or Knicks teams or other teams or Florida, and the Defensive Player of the Year, which I think in a lot of ways is, at least to me, and I'm not a basketball guy, but very much an effort, planning, preparation type award, in that you're not going to get outworked and hustled and the like, and you're going to be smart. And I don't know, the Defensive Player of the Year to me is quite an honor for what it says about somebody's character in addition to all their talent. I saw a quote one time, Stacey King, of course, great Bulls player, who then is a Bulls broadcaster now. Stacey King had the quote one time after Jordan scored 69 points in a game. And King said, I'll always remember tonight as the night that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 70 points because he had won. But from his viewpoint, it was all about what is his role? What did they need from him on a given night or what to do? And it struck me that you're very much that that kind of player? When you looked at the team, when you looked at relationships, when you looked at, am I coming back for another year? How am I going to play tonight on the court? Is that a fair assessment in how you viewed things?
I think that, my role, everybody has a role to play when you're on a team, and it's about accepting your role and how you can make your team better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that floats. That's not, here's my role, this is what I got to do. Every year it could change, every moment can change. Sometimes you got to hit a big shot when that's not really what you do. But also, every day, I think that the constant that I try to bring is just my energy. When you're playing in the NBA, you're playing sometimes 4 games in a week. A lot of times you're going to be tired, and especially as a group. So my role was, how do I kind of levitate the group, keep the group up, positive through adversity. I think those were kind of the things that kind of I needed to do to make our team better.
Yeah. Well, you certainly were known for that energy. It certainly made you a target at times, I think, among opposing crowds, for sure. But then it seemed like you just fed off that even more.
It's all energy. At the end of the day, whether it's good or bad, it's all about how you handle it. Sometimes I did that pretty well. Sometimes I didn't. It's all part of the growing your path, and and learning from it. And so there were times where I was on point and I was healthy and I was thriving in it, and then there were times where I didn't and I failed, and it was tough. But it's all about being able to bounce back from adversity and look at it as a learning experience, and sometimes that's really tough.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about then the larger culture, and I want to come back to learning as we go through life in a bit. But when we talk about the larger culture and tying into those home fans or away fans or anybody who might be listening to you after the game, or what do athletes have a responsibility to engage in culture and issues, or is it a privilege or is it a responsibility? Do you have a viewpoint on how athletes should be viewing that?
I think everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
I like to speak from my experience and not judge people. I think, to me, it's I think culture is very important, and being open to differences, people who think different than you, and also, I think that sometimes we might have good points, and but it's about, to me, the people that are really interesting are people who have patience and people who listen, and who might not agree, but really try to understand, like, where's this person coming from, and I think that when I was at UF, I was young, and I had a little arrogance to me because I thought I knew things, and I think that as you get older, I appreciate people who have patience for people who are different than them, and I think that I come from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of cultures. um, my father's from West Africa and France, so those are two cultures themselves, and my mother's Swedish. I was born in New York City. I lived in New York City for a long time, so I come from a lot of different places, so I was raised to accept people for who they are. So I think that, yeah, I think that as an athlete, you have that we're lucky and we're blessed to, like, when you're in a locker room, you're always going to be around people from different backgrounds. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's a certain. You got 15 athletes, and we have one goal, is to win the ball game. And you know what? It's nice to have a dinner with a teammate that you don't really know and make them feel like, like, just listen to them and talk to them, vibe with them. I think that's something that's important in trying to build chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the points you keep making, and one of so the listening, the having dinner, the sitting down and understanding somebody, where they're coming from. to me, that's in short supply, and I'm not sure that social media is helping. That there's not a whole lot of nuance on Twitter, and there's not a whole lot of chance to have to engage before people are shouting at you in all caps or they're blowing up, whatever. But it does seem like there's an opportunity, at least if and when people can listen, or maybe we need to be the ones to listen. But you also talked about learning. Let me ask you this. So last summer, of course, so many things between the pandemic, between the protests and George Floyd's death, and a lot of things going on. And one thing that I was thinking was that I was so, in some ways, book smart, but immature and not very worldly smart. And I thought, boy, if I'd gotten to when I was on campus at 18, 19 years old, and watching these athletes who were helping organize things in Gainesville or in other college towns, and they were doing a great job by and large. But I was also thinking, boy, I wouldn't have been ready for that. And that felt like a lot that some of them were taking on their shoulders. Any thoughts on that? That it seems like that in some ways we're forcing people into places, into positions, into things where maybe I didn't have to think through some of those things at 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah. And you know what? It's a positive and a negative. First of all, you know, I admire to me, the ones that I looked up to are the ones who use their platforms to talk against social injustice and make a positive impact that was bigger than winning and losing a basketball or a game, or, you know, my heroes were always those guys.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I think that it's important for guys to understand that you need to be right yourself before you can help anybody, you know, and sometimes some of these issues are really overwhelming, and then it when it takes I mean, the politicians barely know what to do,
Right.
you know. So how's an athlete who's 18?
Yeah, totally. And the other point that I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Hello.
Hey, I got you. I can hear you. Thanks.
Sorry, it's kind of cutting up a little, but can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
So I think that, you know, when you go on a plane, you know, they tell you, you know, put the mask on first before you can help anybody. I think that analogy is it makes sense for what's going on as an athlete. You know, make sure that your preparation is right. You take care of what you got to do for your team, and then when you have the time to be able to, you know, work in you know, work with after school programs and do things for kids and use your platform to inspire people who come from your background or around the world, especially you have that voice now to be able to do that. It's a beautiful thing. You know, that's to be able to inspire is what it's all about. And that's what.
Yeah.
That is to be able to inspire. Like, to me, when people come up to me and say, "Oh, I was at UF, you know, 15 years ago when you won the championship." Like, there's no better feeling when I see that look in their face and see the joy that you brought. Like, that's what it's all about. And then maybe you can resonate and talk to them and vibe with them, and then in some way you're able to do something, you know, an after school program together, or do something together with one of your fellow classmates, or that you had from 15 years ago, and then you do something and you do amazing work where you can help kids, and that's, you know, or empower kids and put them in positions to win. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And again, coming back to relationships, whether it's relationships with somebody.
Oh my God, it's cutting up. Sorry.
That's all right. I can still hear you. So, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Not great.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, I can hear you well. So let me just ask you this, if you can hear it, is to the extent that there are different ways to do things like Noah's Ark Foundation or after school.
Did you just say, did you want me to talk about Noah's Ark Foundation?
Yeah, different way. Yes. And different ways to people to that they can get involved in things they're interested in, ways athletes could do that.
I'm sorry, you're cutting up. I can't hear you, but um, I'll talk a little bit about my foundation, and so I started my foundation with my mother about 10 years ago. Um, it's about our foundation is about empowering kids after school programs through sports and art. My mom does art therapy with the kids. We started this foundation in Chicago, um, and it's to me it really helped me as a player because I realized that I was doing something that was bigger than basketball, and seeing kids happy, especially in a place like Chicago where the violence is um, out of control. I realized that the power was really in these after school programs because it was keeping kids off the street. And I was going back to the court, and it was giving me all this extra energy. I was going out there because I was playing for something that was bigger than myself. I was like, oh my God, like going to these um, going to these after school programs and seeing all these kids so happy, and it was just, it gave me so much energy. But then I started building relationships with these kids and trying to help, and uh, I I got myself into something that was, it got hard because I didn't come from that background. I didn't come from a
Mm,
violent background, and Chicago was violent. Some of the kids were dying. Some of the
mm,
kids weren't coming back to art art class or coming back
mm,
to um, playing in the tournaments because um, and that was very hard for me. I couldn't um, I couldn't understand. I didn't. Just basketball started. I started getting second thoughts, and it was just I became drained, and um, I got overwhelmed.
mm.
So I think it's just important to be able to do as much as you can, but also understand that there's a balance
Mhm.
because you have to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your family. You got to take care of your kids, um, and you got to be able to give to your community. And I think that being able to give to the community in the right way is the ultimate. It's the ultimate success. There's nothing better than being able to give to your community and and build things and empower kids. But at the same time, there's a balance because if you can go overboard, and it can become very overwhelming. And you look at the ones who paid the ultimate sacrifice, and those are the ones that we respect the most. You look at what Muhammad Ali had to give up, and our like real heroes, the ones who sacrificed it all to but the reason why there are heroes is because they sacrifice so much.
Mm.
And you have at the end of the day, you have to make the decision, um, what's what that balance is.
Right. Totally makes sense. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry. Yeah, I can
Okay,
hear
great. Now, I mean, it's for the best. I mean, if there's only one of us that we can hear, we want it to be you. Uh,
you.
but
Thanks.
I think you raise a couple of great points. Is that one, certainly the issue of sacrifice and being involved, but I think we're also seeing with Naomi Osaka and others who are trying to find that balance and saying, I do need to help, I do need to speak out, I do need to be available for media stuff, but I also have to take care of myself and my own emotional and mental well-being. That one of the things that I heard recently that I thought was a great insight was somebody saying you don't have to have an opinion on everything, that the world wants to force you to say, what's your thoughts on X? And there are times when you just need to sit down and go, I don't know enough about X to talk about it yet.
Yeah,
um,
I think
or,
that takes a humility, and as you get older, I think that I'm more comfortable saying that now. But when you're 19, 20 years old, you have to learn. When you're talking to the media, whatever the craziest thing you're going to say, it could be a 30-minute interview. The craziest thing you're going to say is going to be the headline, and you're going to look crazy out there.
uh,
you know so you just have to be, and you're going to be like, wow, I said all this, important stuff that I wanted to cover, and the craziest shit I said is the headline. So you just, it's just, I guess it's experience at the end of the day, and just learning from all that. And
Yeah.
at the same time, like you wonder why all these athletes sound like robots. It's because of that. They
Mhm.
It's because as soon as they say something that's a little bit out of pocket, it's that's what's gonna be talked about.
Right. Right. Yeah, we want them to be new and creative, except when they say something, we run with it and mock them or whatever. And so yeah, that's when you get, back in when I was in school and Bull Durham came out and they were like, look, this is all you say. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll play again tomorrow. Well, and you give all the cliches, and you play it safe. Let me ask you just one more thing, and then we'll bring Steve in a minute. And I want to talk about how the club can come along and support the athletes, and get Steve's involvement for that. But talk a little bit about NBA Africa and what's going on with that, and when we're talking about culture and building into lives and the like, how you all see that coming about.
Well, I'm very proud to be a part of NBA Africa, and this has been a dream of mine since I can remember. Just being able to give back, and my father's from West Africa, and it's the best gift that he ever gave me, was being able to go back and see my family over there as I was growing up. And I think that you realize that Africa has a lot to give, and growing up in New York City, I was always shocked about how poor the relationship between you know Black America and Africans. The connection is uh, the relationship is not, it's not great, to be honest. And I always felt like the reasons are very, very deep. Um, and to me, it was like Bob Marley, for example, was always one of my biggest inspirations, and it was always about building that bridge back to Africa and that connection back to Africa, and being able to talk about it, and now having a platform like NBA Africa, where basketball and sports is such a unifier, and being able to do things together where um, Black Americans can come in and go see Africa for what it is. Because when you think about Africa, all you think about is poverty, and it's just the way it's portrayed in the media is just not at all what's going on. And I think that it's Africa. There's nothing more empowering and inspiring than being in the motherland. I mean, I leave there and I come back a different person. My first championship at UF, I spent 3 weeks in Africa before that championship, and I mean, I was not playing that year. We were just talking about it. I was not playing that year, and then the next year I got MVP of the Final Four. And I always say it's because of my time there. It just made me stronger, and being able, and this NBA Africa opportunity is great, because there's so many. I come from a basketball background, obviously, so I'm going to be able to bring a lot of people from the inner city, and they're going to be able to come to Africa and also do this, and vice versa. A lot of Africans being able to come back to the U.S. and get opportunities as well. So to me, this is what I've always wanted. This has always been my life's work. I never knew there would be an NBA Africa, but I put myself in a position where I can invest um, in something that's so important. And this is going to be my lifelong work from now on. Now that my basketball career is over.
Fantastic. Yes, and for those who don't know, I think it's a 10-team league throughout the continent, a team in Cameroon, as well as 9 others around the
Yeah.
continent.
The league is something they just started, but they're franchising it, and
Uh-huh.
what I'm the most excited about is just the grassroots root work, and just being able to build more academies and just all, the mentality for athletes in Africa has always been, it was never looked at. Basketball has never been looked at as a business and an opportunity to take care of your family. People always, always about going overseas and getting your education. But now, as an 18-year-old, those questions are real. As an 18-year-old, when you have an opportunity to make $350,000 as an 18-year-old, you have to really look at that. And that's something that we're building right now.
Great. Well, that'll be interesting to watch how that all continues to progress. And there are 5 of you, right? Former players who are investors in it,
yes,
and as well as the NBA itself. So that'll be interesting to see how it all comes about.
Yeah, it's a very special opportunity, and I think the first year was definitely a success. It was a first-class operation, and we just got to keep building on it. And now it's just really focusing on the grassroots and getting these players better every day. And looking forward to spending more time there in Africa and checking out the different cultures. There's so many different countries, so many different cultures. So I'm really looking forward to spending time over there and doing that work.
Fantastic. Well, great. Well, let's bring Steve into the conversation and have him join it. And hello, Steve. How are you? Good.
Okay. That's great what you were talking about real quick about the NBA Africa, because former player Luol Deng is involved, and even one of our former players, Chris Silva, and how you talk about your past is always in your future. Stefan Lasme was a player with the Heat back. I've been around such a long time. He played for us in 2007, and Chris always talks to me about a clinic that changed his life in Gabon, and that Stefan Lasme hosted a clinic when he was a kid, didn't even know that he could play basketball. And because of that one clinic, it inspired him to come and further his skill set and make an NBA career. So I can't wait to help you, Joakim, with that and figure out ways that we could vibe and synergize on that, because I believe in growing this game globally. And it really is about the grassroots efforts off the main court and teaching a kid that he can be something, maybe in the NBA or just so many life lessons about that ball that brings us across the world. And it's pretty kudos, man. Great stuff that you're doing with that.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that, brother.
Thank
Steve.
you.
Steve, thanks for looking out for me always.
Always.
Big shout out, Steve Stowe. The OG.
So let me just ask a little bit to transition off that, bring it back stateside, at least for just a minute, and talk about the tragedy in Surfside. And, for those who don't know, North Miami Beach, up there north of you guys a little bit, but what have you all been doing? Because I think this does, in some ways, at least in a very concrete, specific way, tie into how clubs, individuals, athletes can take a hands-on approach to things. Tell us a little bit about that, Steve. When we started this, you said you were soaked because it was raining and you were up at Surfside.
Yeah, absolutely. Just coming back from the site, but really playing off of what Joakim said about quotes and comments and being robotic. I can relate to that as an executive in the NBA. It's difficult to take action, and it's difficult to actually, put something into motion, and people, look to us for our words. They look to us for our statements. They look to us for our comments, and obviously, politically correct comments are welcomed a lot all over the place. But listening to what Joakim said is exactly how I feel. It's easy to write a statement and put it out and wash your hands with a situation. And that's not what I'm about. That's not what we're about at the Heat. This tragedy in Surfside hits home to me. I've been dealing with this, hate to say it, 24 hours a day since it happened last Thursday morning. I got the call I couldn't even believe that it even happened. I grew up about 10 blocks from there. I still live near there, and it's tough. So before I could even wrap my head around the situation, we were able to, mobilize and talk to Tyler Hero and a couple of our assistant coaches and go down there, because when I placed the call to law enforcement, as you know, Nathan, we work so close with Miami-Dade's, finest fire and police, and City of Miami and Miami Beach and Surfside. We have these relationships, and being born and raised here, these are my friends. These are not acquaintances. These are people who I'll give blood for. And when I called the chief and his folks that morning just to check in, I heard the horribleness in his voice, and I knew something was wrong. And I knew I had to do something. And before I could even get to the arena, we started making plans to buy water and supplies, because the chief said, been here since 1:30 in the morning. We don't have anything, right now. These guys have been working 8-9 hours straight. They didn't anticipate, nobody's has experience in this. So when we went down there and delivered the water, it was so great to see Tyler Hero, who's a young NBA player, and due to health and safety protocols, he's really, as Joakim knows, we're very strict with our protocols. He's never been in the community for a couple years, so to speak, because of COVID and everything. So to have him there, talk to the frontline workers, and just let them know, look, we're here, we're not going anywhere. World Central Kitchen was right behind me in a food truck that we have a relationship with them, with the earthquake in Haiti, the Hurricane Irma and Maria, and then unfortunately working directly with them last summer on food insecurity. I got to tell you, I'm extremely proud to say that we kicked off a whole chain of fundraising and a whole chain of love that came to that site. Right after that, we got with all the local foundations, created a link, supportsurfside.org. I just got a text during this while Joakim was talking that we got over $3 million raised so far, which is incredible. And then like you just said, it's raining, the weather's not cooperating. President Biden's coming tomorrow, so it's a big deal. And the Gator Nation and the University of Florida, like Joakim said, has so much of who I am inside me, and to just leave that site with Udonis Haslam and see the love that the community has for him, of also growing up down here. And we were there laying some flowers on the memorial wall and meeting with the mayor and talking again to the folks that have just been living there since Thursday. And so the University of Florida can be proud today to know that we're here doing a lot of things, not just in Gainesville, not just in Florida, Miami, but Africa, all over the world, representing the school.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And I appreciate that. And I think a couple of things in that. I think one is, as Joakim has talked about, as he's seen, as you've talked about, there's a magnification effect when you all do something out in the community. When Joakim speaks about the importance of arts and sports in the schools or in the lives of inner city kids, or when you talk about let's get out there and give water or do whatever it is, or support first responders in these times. I think people hear that. It's amplified coming from you all. But I also think people can look to it and see that at the end of the day, you raised $3 million, you did some other great stuff, but at the end of the day, you and your player, you were just a guy interacting with an inner city kid, or interacting with and they can do that as individuals. That I think that it also provides a modeling effect where you can, you're, at the end of the day, you're just people out there building relationships and doing things. And so I think it can also help people see there's a roadmap for getting their hands dirty and getting involved in some of these relationships where they can have an impact and they can build into culture and society and the world around them. Is that fair?
100%. Look, relationships are everything. Joakim and I have a brotherhood because we're in the association together. And I know I could call him and say, I need you today to come down and do something. He never played for the Heat. I wish he did. We spoke about that. He didn't, but we competed against each other all those years, not me on the court, because you don't want to see me at that level. That's another level that I want no part of. But no, we are all together, and relationships are key. So somebody that I grew up with now is the general manager of a company or a police chief or, you know, a first responder, a dentist, a teacher, whatever it is, you know, I think relationships and like we've talked about, listening beautifully, being empathetic. I think we live in a society right now, due to the pandemic, in my opinion, that we're you know, completely used to stereotyping, pointing fingers, labeling, and we can't be like that as a society. So if I could bring anything to this community, that I'll tell you, standing out there today with my feet wet and seeing Udonis, who I love, I have a very surreal moment where my heart is beating together with everybody there, and it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right, because the seeing these people in my city and seeing the things that they're doing, it's not right. It shouldn't happen. And that building that collapsed should not have happened. And it's hard to do your job. And it pains me, and I'm not doing great right now, because I feel for all the families that are, you know, just hoping for closure and things like that, to find somebody there that they may not find. So I think relationships are so important, that somebody can come up to me who I don't know, but I know they need to hug me, and I don't know them, and I'm not the touchy-feely person as I want to be, and that is something that we need to be there for them in this moment. And relationships really are everything. And having said that, I think people understand that if we get into thinking and listening better, that we could all be together as one community.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That's a great thought, and this idea, and maybe, and I was going to ask you how you would counsel. Joakim was talking about his growth, his maturity, learning humility. Sometimes he didn't know all the answers, and learning to be able to say that. I was going to ask you what you would tell young players coming into the Heat as they look to engage with the community and other things, what you'd counsel them. It may be part of this answer of relationships, listening beautifully, other things, because it seems like a lot of that is going to be applicable to people listening, people who are outside of some of these areas, who are just going about their daily lives. I think a lot of these things would have completely apply in this day and age.
Well, look, I feel the same way what Joakim said. I was also 18, 19 years old at University of Florida in Gainesville. I'm from Miami. Gainesville is a small city. I know there are people who are listening to this that understand what I'm talking about, and going to a small community. And I doubted myself at that time. I didn't think that I could do it. I didn't think I could succeed in such a big school. And listening to like what Joakim says, the same thing. He could talk about that too. You can't doubt yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And that's what I would say is, don't doubt yourself, because if you feel strongly about something, you need to speak up, you know, and that's something that I think I want all of, you know, youth or whoever to be comfortable in your own skin. You know, if it's something that you want to do it and take action about it. So maybe Joakim can talk about that too, you know, University of Florida, and at that being a young, whether you're on the court, on the field, it doesn't matter. It's bigger than you, and you have to realize how to not doubt yourself.
It's that, to me, that's really interesting, because everybody's educated over there. Everybody at UF is smart. You're there for a reason, you know, and everybody can make a solid point, but you have to be okay with somebody who's gonna have a different opinion. And I think that has nothing to do with education. That's having empathy, and that's something that's completely different. I mean, everybody can make educated points, you know. So it's about being able to, first of all, relate. And I think that's Steve. I think that's something that's really beautiful. You know, sometimes as an athlete, you feel like it's so important, especially with the young players, that they feel the people. And I think that's what you're doing right now. And just big shout out to you, Steve, for doing that, because these teams, man, are not just the guys playing. These teams, the staffs and the people who are doing the work behind the scenes and putting these guys in a position where they can touch the people in the times of need. Like, that's what it's all about, and that's how me and Steve connected. Obviously, we have the Gator bond, but being able to, like, we related because to me that's what it's all about. Like, when you're in a successful position, sometimes you can be in a neighborhood far away from the people, and life is good, and no, it's important that you when things get rough, that you're there and be able to make a positive impact. That's what it's all about.
Perfect. Thank you. Steve, what do you guys do anything when rookies come in, or young players, to kind of talk to them about, here's ways maybe you'd engage, or here's maybe ways you might not want to initially engage, whether it's, heaven forbid, Twitter, or giving their advice on the hot issues of the day, or whatever it might be? Or how do you help players navigate some of those paths?
That's a great question with so many answers. And first and foremost, I have to evolve and learn how to relate to the 18-year-old today more so than I did to the 18-year-old 5 years ago. I'm in an interesting position where I hate to date myself at all, but I started here in 1999. So that's a long time ago to be working in the NBA, where we didn't have text messages. I've seen the evolution of cell phones, and I know it sounds terrible, email and social media and all these things. And I've been such a traditional person. I work for Pat Riley. We are, blinders on, all basketball, all community, all work. We raise the bar high, but I've had to evolve, and I've had to change the way I look at things, because if the things I look at stay the same, I'm never going to get better. So how can I tell an 18-year-old in the NBA anything about this community if I can't relate to him? Or how can I, give advice if I'm not doing it? Or I started Instagram a couple of years ago. It was uncomfortable for me. It wasn't my space, but that's been a great way for me to communicate or understand and immerse myself in this. And in the same way, with players, as Joakim will tell you, if it's going to dinner with somebody, right, there might be a player that I'm not able to connect with. Maybe he has a situation back home with his family. Maybe there's something that's going on in his personal life with his wife, his girlfriend, anything. And before they get to me, that player has probably had, and Joakim can attest to this, has had 20, 25 conversations with a trainer, a head coach, a PR person, his mom, his agent, his cousin, his best friend, asking, let's go out, let's do this, I need $500, can we do this, can we do that? So by the time that player gets to me, how are they going to be able to understand what I'm asking or what I'm doing? So I need to put myself in their position. And Joakim will know, I relate to these situations, and I don't want to ever be an extra burden for somebody. So yeah, I think in order to help somebody, like Joakim said, with the putting on your mask first on an airplane, absolutely, you need to be an active participant in your own rescue. Save yourself first before you can go and really help somebody else. And it's credibility and character. Players know the NBA player of today is probably the most savvy, educated athlete in the world. The game itself is difficult. A lot of people don't know that. The amount of information that an NBA player has to soak in now to learn the game is different than it was last year with analytics and younger coaches, younger GMs. The game is fast and it's changed. So in order for me to relate to a player right now, I have to change, and I have to understand their upbringing. Maybe now the player now has his mom is somebody who's big in his life, and I need to understand that, or I need to figure out what makes this person tick, or maybe they don't want me close. So yeah, it takes a long time, and it has to be organic, and it can't be something that's forced. And I pride myself in that. Relationships are key. I don't force any relationships. And if I can't get close to a player, that's fine too. We could do beautiful work together without being friends. We're coworkers. And I embrace that as well. So we at the Miami Heat, that's something that we pride ourselves in. We're not gonna stop for anything. We're gonna keep going. And this office right here is quiet right now, but there's guys working out. We got swept in the first round for nothing, And you better believe we're going to be back because the teams are getting better. As if you're watching the playoffs right now, teams are getting better and healthier and stronger, and we have to compete. So it's from top to bottom, from our ownership all the way down, is figuring out ways to get better every day.
Thanks, Steve. And I'm going to follow up on that real quick. I think one of the important things that you emphasize in that answer without saying it is that you may have gotten swept. And I know there are plenty of teams who would like to have gotten to the playoffs at all, and you may have gotten swept. But whether it's Surfside, whether it's the Miami PD and the community, there are lots of ways in which you impact others. And I think to the extent that we see some teams occasionally think, well, this is what we do. Here's our courts. Here's our field. And this is all we do, versus being a community asset. I think they really sell the players, the fans, the coaches, everybody short, because there's so much more in this area of relationships and the like. Joakim, I wanted to kind of close with this. We've only got a couple minutes left, but one of the things that keeps coming to mind when I see you, when I hear your story about, playing and evolving and growing at Florida. And, one last thing that I'll share, it was probably 2013, 14, 15. I was with Billy Donovan over the summer, and he said, Joakim's coming to campus tomorrow, and I've got to make sure that I've got players X, Y, and Z in the gym, because they need to see what an NBA player does on his own time when he's alone in the summer and nobody's watching. Billy said he just always wanted those current players to see you when you were working as hard as you did every summer when you came back to Gainesville and did extra work and extra things. And so I think when you look at that and your development and the way you talked about listening and listening beautifully and creating, the next stage of your life, whether it's NBA Africa or the foundation, and then your mom, who starts out in one direction, ends up being a sculptor, and then your dad, who I continue to think of as having a tennis racket, but I should picture him with a microphone and a musician. I think there's this chance for change and evolving and learning that we all have. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe talk a little bit about how we create relationships and we build and we grow in life?
For sure. I think it's just, look, 5 years ago, I would never do this right now that we're doing right now, just because Steve is with the Heat and, we were enemies in what we did. I was with the Chicago Bulls and we were on a ride trying to get a championship, and anything if you said Miami Heat around me, I would cringe. And that's the reality of now. We're talking real, and now it's like I'm not playing anymore. I was a competitor, and that's how I was raised that way, and that's how I played, and people loved me for that. But being a competitor can be very divisive too. I got my colors, and fuck you guys, and that was my energy. That's who I was, and that's what made us who we were. But at the end of it now, it's like, this is not who I am anymore. I'm about unity and bringing people together and doing things that can make an impact. And when I met Steve, I didn't have that anymore. All that stuff, all that competitive spirit that's not who it's not who I am anymore. I'm more about building connections and being able to do dope things together. That to me is better. I look at some of the guys and they could be friends right after a game. I was not like that. I wasn't making friends with people on other teams, period. So it's cool that we're in a position right now, even though, we're Gators and we're talking about how how you change. I changed. That's not who I am anymore. And it's okay. I'm really proud of who I was, but if I was that way right now, then we wouldn't be having this, be having this conversation right now. So I think that's an example of how I changed, is being able to say, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be that I want to see people for who they are, and not just because you're from this city or you're Miami Heat. I think that's 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I couldn't have done it, but now I can.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thanks. I really appreciate y'all's thoughts on learning to understand others, listening to others, and meeting others' needs where they are, and then also appreciating that you and I and they can also change over time, and giving people the grace and the chance to grow with that. So, Joakim, thanks so much for being a part of this and for being on screen with a Miami Heat member. And we appreciate that evolution. Steve,
Respect, bro. Respect.
Steve, thank you for squeezing this in, and I appreciate all that you're doing in Surfside, and thanks for coming on even wet and bedraggled and emotionally worn out as I know you are. But thank you both so much for your time and for being a part of this. And on behalf of UF and the Wasdin series, thank you.
Appreciate you. Go Gators. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Talk good. Take care.
Peace.
Thanks. You too. Bye.